Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Autism Book Club, Part 4. It is August 3rd, 2015, and we are a little bit discombobulated being here today. Connie and I were just having issues getting on air, which we were talking about how it's really interesting how that keeps happening to us. Every time that we get on to do this book club, we end up having technical difficulties. And we always plan to meet, sometimes half hour before we get on, and we spend a good amount of that time troubleshooting. So it's really interesting, the energies right now, and, messages like this that we're trying to share, and how there are some interference that's going on, but we are persevering and keeping on with it, because this is really special and people need to hear this, those that are able to hear it. We're living in some really interesting times right now, and let's just say that we have a really big opportunity to let go of a lot of things that are happening in our lives that aren't serving us. And I can attest to that. I, in the last couple weeks have been experiencing old patterns and things that I know that, I easily have gotten entangled in, things that are small, but they're drama, and they're things that have to do with, just the daily living of life, family, and the dynamics. And as some of you know, I have small children, and so there's a lot of challenges that go on with that, just like it does for those who have loved ones with autism, no matter what age they are. So I know, Connie, have you been having some things show up for you as well that have been challenging, or what have you been experiencing?
Well, hi. First of all, hello out there. And yes, we did have a lot of issues trying to get on today. But we are here, yay. And lately, I have been going through a lot of internal things. I mean, I really feel like if we don't go inside, we're going to be forced to go inside, whether you like it or not. But I've been dealing with just things that have come up from my childhood, and it's not that I'm trying to think about these things, they'll just come up. And I'm learning that's, how was it explained to me? Everybody's getting the same recipe, from the Godhead. So we're all getting the recipe of going inward. So however that is going to bake in your oven is up to you. Does that make sense? I hope so. But it's depending on the person, you're going to have to go inward in your own way. And it's not as easy as, one would think, or they may think that they always go inside. I always go inside. I'm honest with myself. No, you're not, because you're not reflecting. I don't see you reflecting. I see a lot of TV watching. I see a lot of celebrity worshiping, not to sound preachy, but we're not really going inside the way we should be going inside. So there is a lot coming up with me, and family. Although the family's not huge, but it's a part of it. Dealing with Daniel, he's been going through things that sometimes when he goes through his things, I look at it as I'm doing something wrong. I'm not being sensitive to him, and it's really just working with my own stuff.
Yeah, I can totally relate to all of that. I love the metaphors that you use about cooking in your oven and that sort of thing. I think that that's an absolute reflection, as you mentioned, of, what's coming up for us, the things that maybe we're not consciously bringing forth on purpose, but they're coming up for us. And my experience has often been when things surface into our awareness, they're actually leaving. But it's really, that's the challenge for, I know myself, is to not get tangled back up with, why it's there and all of that sort of stuff, because the universe loves us and the law of attraction is solid, and that, it just returns to us exactly what we're putting our attention on. So I would just suggest, to be easy on yourselves and do what you can to allow whatever comes up, because what's trying to be revealed, and Gail touches on this in chapter 7, which everything is so timely with this process of what's really shining through is the truth of who you are, and all of those things that are challenges, and call it karma, call it our past issues and densities. There's so many labels we can put on it. Those things are coming up to be released so that we can be who we really are, which is clear and love, and radiate those higher frequencies that are pushing all of those things to the surface. And we can reveal the truth of who we are, which is not the dramas, which are not the stories, all the things of our past. We have a chance to really make a difference in the world, and we do that one person at a time, and the only person that can really do that is ourselves. So this is a big challenge, because we're at a time where we're really facing letting go of belief systems that we don't even know we hold inside of us. And I know a big one is that self-love. That's ultimately what it comes to. And I'll quote something that I'll read to you something that Gail wrote towards the end of chapter 7 in regards to that, because that's really truly what it's all about. And a lot of us are really willing to shine our light and save the world and be in service, but the part that often is a little uncomfortable for us is loving ourselves. But that's where it needs to begin. So going inward is really kind of digging through all of the baggage and the luggage that we have, those cloaks that we've been wearing that kind of hide who we really are. And so I'm really excited to go through this chapter and kind of dig into that a little bit, because we're getting into the second part of the book. And the second part of the book is written most solely by Lyrica and her nonverbal partners in the Chrysalis Gold. And this part of the book is going to require a lot of the heart being open and a lot of quieting of that rational mind that's going to jump in and try to doubt or try to have its opinion, because the rational mind only knows what. This is where the keys and the codes that are within us become unlocked with the data that is almost between the spaces within these words. So do what you can as coming up into this next part of the book to be gracious with yourself and just absorb what you can, but go through it and enjoy the very profound messages that come through. I want to just do a couple of quick announcements. Let's see, for the date for the next show, we have gotten it together on that. We are going to do it on August, I believe it's 18th. Yeah, Tuesday, August 18th. And we'll be going over the next 2 chapters, 8 and 9. So that'll give you guys a nice couple weeks to kind of stew with the information. I don't think they're very long chapters, so you may be able to go over them a couple times. And there was something that I mentioned that I didn't get to touch on in the last show, which there will be a link to this video. It was in regards to the toning meditation. It's a meditation that's mentioned in the last chapter. I believe it was in 6. And it's something that you can access on the Autism website. And so I will put the link for that down below as well. There are about 12, I believe, recordings of some live meditations and tonings that we did. We use toning in the meditation, and I know that Gail and Lyrica were utilizing this meditation for quite a long time. And the last 12, I believe, touch on some Kundalini points. And it's really about that personal evolution. And they are very powerful. And so just like anything else, you may have some experiences, some challenging times that come up from practices like these. But, hold steadfast and be true to yourself and trust that your soul is guiding you if you so feel guided to participate in these. And it's pretty simple. I think you just have to register on the site to participate in those. But those are really wonderful. Yeah, and so let's just kind of dive in. Connie, is there anywhere that you want to start us off to touch on in chapter 7?
Well, one of the things in chapter 7, when I first started reading it, actually I was in Sedona when I glanced back over it, and there was Gail was mentioning her trip to Sedona and in the summer solstice weekend in 2008, and she was talking about a channeled message from a spirit named I'm probably not pronouncing the name correctly, but the spirit was or elemental spirit was Melenkin. And that message, this is why this book is so remarkable, because there'll be things in the book that you read it and it's good when you read it, don't get me wrong, but then you'll read it a year or two later and it's like it opens to that perfect section about what's going on in your life right in that very moment. Because I'm telling you, that message was channeled to her back then in 2008, but it was for me in that now moment in Sedona. And he's talking about you can block yourself, you know, don't limit yourself. Bless the mystery and watch the unfolding as though it's someone else's movie. That was just so profound to me. And then she writes, I knew something big was coming. But I think Gail, when she wrote this, when she goes, I knew something big was coming, I think she probably thought it was like right there. But it's like, wow, isn't that beautiful? That was amazing. It was amazing. And I had to actually, let me see here. I lost my thought. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's perfect. I love how in sync we are when it comes to this, because, you know, we have not scripted any of this. And Connie and I were laughing a little bit how blank we felt when we got on air finally, navigating through all of this. But yeah, no, that's perfect. That's where I was kind of where my first highlight began was in that spot. And I love that part. You're totally right. As far as the time, I wanted to mention this because I know I have kind of mentioned it before, but I got in touch with Gail just to clarify. So the first chapter of the book was written in July 2007, and that was chapter 8. And it took the book 4 years to write, edit, design, and publish. And so the book was released and published in, it was released in 2011. And that's also at the end of 2011 is when I met Gail and Lyrica in Sedona with the group of Chrysalis Gold Hearts, who were just a group of women that supported them in helping them get their work out into the world. And that's when we kind of went a little more public with them, and they started doing the Tony meditations online, live and that sort of thing. So you're so right, Connie. You know, some of this really does transcend time. And I knew when this information was happening. I mean, back in Sedona, I was talking about this book club already then, back in 2011. And so we're in just this pivotal time. It really is showing that, you know, a lot is very possible, and we just need to be open to that. And I love this line that she wrote here, and I believe it was in the message from the elemental spirit. You are to trust that all that you do and receive is in perfection and will continue to the narrowing of your energy streams into a channel that can later be understood. There's no question about your future direction, although you are not clear as to the specific path awaiting you. Your lack of clarity is an all-important element that serves to leave all possibilities open, closing no doors. If you try to control this process, you will limit it, and by doing so, subjugate yourself to a much longer and more demanding cycle of transformation. Bless the mystery and watch the unfolding as though it is someone else's movie. That was that same thing that you read. I love that, and I think that that's a way to really kind of kick off the weight that some of the things in our life does to us. Because if you really kind of expand into the greater perspective, that unified field, you can look down at your life and see it as a movie. And that's why I mentioned the word drama, because I totally equate it to that. You know, this is a human experiment and even can be called a game, which I love calling it, this life on earth, this human experience, because in regards to the soul and the eternalness of who we really are, this is just you know, like a feature film of the timeline of our many lives and incarnations that we're able to experience, should you believe in that. But that's definitely been my experience. So yeah, that's awesome. It's important to see that, because there is a much bigger picture, and sometimes expanding out to that view can really help one get through the processes that we're experiencing at the time, no matter how challenging, you know, because there is a lot of craziness and darkness that we are navigating through at this time. So on that same page, let's see, it rolls over to page 88. It touches on exactly kind of what I was talking about. I highlighted this part where it says, it was also clear that our depth of sorrow also begged for release. And that to me is what I noted as catalytic expressions. And in this part, Gail's talking about the death of a dear friend that is mentioned in the book, Keith, and what her and Lyrica went through as far as their processing of the pain that was happening. And, you know, there's many things that are happening even right now. Connie told me an interesting story about a very sacred or important lion that was killed, and the death of this animal really raised a lot of consciousness and awareness around the planet. I wasn't familiar with the story, but it's very interesting how these things that seem so tragic actually do have some really good that comes out of it. So is there anything you want to touch on that point as far as these catalytic experiences that we have, and maybe how you've experienced going through them to then realize later that they did have a purpose or a meaning?
Wow. Well, just going back to Cecil the lion real quick, you know, that just reading that, I don't watch the news, okay? I don't really do too much television, but sometimes it's forced on me. Like if you open the computer to go check your email, there's a story, and I remember that story hitting me like a ton of bricks. And I knew just looking at the headline that that story was gonna to awaken people, and it did. You know, it helped everyone realize what we are doing as far as the, you know, animal, respecting the animal kingdom. You know, why did you want to go out and massacre that lion? Was it for your ego? You know, we get to see ego, how ugly ego can be, but don't get it twisted. We need our egos. That's another story, but that, not the overinflated ego that we have. So there was a lot of ego in that story. So, and just to go back real quick, my mind is, there is some energy going on to where my mind is just totally sleepy. And I noticed that even Daniel and my husband, hold on. Sorry about that. We have all this weird energy going on. So I apologize if I seem a little out of it, because, you know, I'm just really working with these energies right now.
Well, I'm right there with you, Connie, so I can relate. I know I've been experiencing sleep patterns changing. You know, I wake up at certain times in the morning that's very early, and I feel like I could get up, but I know that if I don't try to go back to sleep, then when I do get up, I'm tired because I've just been exhausted throughout the day, you know. And I was on vacation for about 9 days, and, you know, I feel like I didn't get any rest and I was on a cruise. So it's kind of one of those things that um, I can't deny that the energies are definitely affecting. I mean, I feel them absolutely. And those of us that are more sensitive and just paying a little bit more attention are going to notice that. So,
Well, you know, Amy, I just yesterday, and I'm not really a sensitive person, you know, but just yesterday when I went to the store, I felt like I was going to be knocked over with all the energy. I don't know what's going on with that. So I don't know if I should mention that for everyone to keep an eye on that, how you feel when you go places. But, you know, so it's not just really sensitive people. It's like, I feel like all of us are being impacted, but some of us may not know what it is. But I can tell you, I was almost knocked over. Went to the store with just the energy, and I had to ground myself and just whatever I could think to do to make it better. And I started thinking about Daniel, and I wondered, oh my goodness, is this what he feels when he walks into establishments, or if he, like in this chapter, Gail talks about when she took Lyrica to Sedona, to Bell Rock for the first time. She thought, oh, this is going to be a great experience. She's going to love it. But it actually hit her, really hard. Lyrica, it hit her, and I was wondering, is this how they feel? Am I experiencing this? I don't know.
that's a really good question. That raises a lot of things, a lot of thoughts in my mind at this point. One being that, perhaps we are all actual sensitive beings. We're coming into the awareness of what we're capable of sensing, but perhaps we don't see it that way. Maybe you are becoming more sensitive, more aware to the energies, especially with your growth. I believe it comes with that because my experience has been that the more conscious I become, the more I'm able to access higher dimensions, or just calling them higher because of the number that is attached to them. Not that they're necessarily higher or better, but it's just like you're more aware of what's going on. There are the dimensions of, let's call the realm of the elementals, the animal realm. Those kingdoms are something that we have not been connected to. We have been separated from, as well as separated within ourselves. And so the more we become connected, more of the dots become connected within us as we clear through the blocks that have prevented those things from being connected, then we suddenly become more aware of things that we weren't aware of before. And I think it's really important to acknowledge, not only for ourselves, but to each other. And that's why I encourage all of you that are participating in this book club to, share your stories. And I kind of last minute from the last book club, we decided, Gail had the great idea to have some of you on air with us. And that still is an open invitation. Because even if you're a little camera shy, I would still love to hear from you. We would love to share your stories and your experiences, because that is really what helps all of us kind of dig up the courage to be able to put ourselves out there and to share these outrageous experiences that at this point feel outrageous. They could be positive, they could be negative, but the point is it's not our job to judge that. It's more our position to come together as human beings and beings of light to share this experience, because it really opens up the message, and as well as opens up the message within ourselves. And there are, I know, tons of experiences out there that are happening that are not being shared. And that's simply because people are not used to this. They feel that it's odd, that they feel it's woo-woo, someone's going to think they're weird, they're not going to understand. But I bet you the more that people come out and actually share these experiences, then there's people are going to start to open up and say, wow, maybe I'm not so weird. Maybe what is happening to me is actually very real. And I think that what you touched on, Connie, is absolutely correct, that everybody's going through this experience, whether we are choosing this consciously or not. You know, some people are excited about ascension and other people are not. And I just really want to quickly touch on what you were talking about with the bell rock and the energies. The point that Lyrica brings, and this is kind of brings up a lot of questions for me, that perhaps those that are caretakers or parents of people with autism can share some of their experiences with this. But it's been my understanding that those with autism have a big challenge with being embodied and grounded into their physical bodies. And Lyrica touches on that. It had to do with what she experienced. And it was like she referred to her body as a prison. So it took her some time for that integration to happen. You know, it's like slamming her into her body to be in those energies. And then when she touched the rocks with her feet, is that elemental, it's almost like a bridging energy that they offer us to this earth and to creation and physicality that we see. Something about that assisted her, and then it kind of brought some more ease for her. But it was not a good experience. I think she described it as like when her skin used to be touched by fingers or by somebody else. It just was painful. So please, I invite any of you to kind of share about that. Have you had any of your loved ones, you know, why do they do the things that they do? Why do they seem like they're screaming in agony, or they're banging their heads, or whatever it is that they're doing? They're spinning because they're trying to integrate this energy into that physical body that they're somewhat feeling trapped in sometimes, right? I think, Connie, can you share about something you shared with me about Daniel, anything that in regards to that? But I think I remember you telling me a story recently about his experience of what it feels like for him, maybe when he's kind of going way out of the body because he's experiencing heavy energies.
He mentioned, and I was going to try to find it before you mentioned it. That's so funny. He was mentioning that when he screams, it's that his body is going through, sometimes it feels like he is about to die, but it's not. It's because he goes so far out of his body. And that's what the screaming is all about. And that's another challenge. I mean, I actually Googled the other day autism and screaming, and I came across a website where there were several. Here I am thinking I'm alone, because I do think I'm alone sometimes. You know, I have the nonverbal autistic, and he screams, you know, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm alone. But I'm not. And there are a lot of us out there, and there's no clue why the screaming goes on. So just hearing from Daniel's point of view of it, I get to see, okay, this is how you're feeling. And it was very difficult for me to know that, you know, that that's what he's going through, that he feels like it's so much for him to handle that he feels like he's going to die.
So Connie, in regards to that, what is your experience as the person watching that? I know you mentioned it's difficult, it's challenging, especially when we're looking at it from a surface place. But if you go inward within yourself, and you've, I'm sure, done that in regards to pondering what's really happening there, can you share a little bit more on what that depth offers that situation?
On what's happening, you know, to be honest, before he mentioned it, when he screamed, I just think that there was a failure in me. You know, there's something I'm doing wrong to cause him to scream. I can't help it, which he did clarify to me that it's not you. You know, it's you're doing great, but I still can't help but to. You know, I don't know. It gets so frustrating. That's and I do the best I can to go within to see, well, what can I do to help. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with that. You know, because it's something I'm still working on. And maybe one day I'll become an expert and dealing with it, you know, but I mean, because you would think that since I know what's going on, I'm like, oh, okay, I can deal with it, but it's a process. It's a process that I have to work on. So.
No, that's good. Thank you. I think that a lot of people can absolutely relate to that. I think our automatic mama bear comes out on us when our children are in pain or something's going on, and we just want to help. It's kind of like that masculine energy where, we're telling our husbands something that's going on, and all they want to do is fix our problems. And maybe that's just a human quality, because we feel it too. We feel their pain on some level, sometimes more than others, depending on our empathic skills. But there is something that I can maybe suggest that has been really helpful for me, something that I've learned through autism, or Awesomism, excuse me, and is when these things are happening with our children and we're able to be in a space where we're just being with them in that moment and we're not judging it. We're, maybe our reaction is to go into that, how can I fix this? How can I help? How can I support? If we're able to be as neutral as possible and not get entangled within that energy, sometimes it's really helpful to turn off a sense. So close your eyes, for example, and maybe put your hand on your heart, or just feel yourself, feel what it's like to be in that experience. And I have sometimes actually even mimicked the experience myself. And I remember, this is kind of a fun story, but when my oldest was about 2 years old, he had this glowing thing, and we were sitting on the bed, and he was shaking it really fast in front of his eyes like this, and his eyes were doing all this weird stuff, and then he would throw himself back onto the bed with this complete just surrender sense of way of being, and he would slam himself to that, and he just kept doing it. And I'm like, that is just weird. That was my thought at first. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to join him in what he's doing. And it was the most incredible experience to feel what that felt like, to have this complete abandon, to throw myself back on the bed like that and not have a fear of hitting my head or something was going to happen. And it was a nice soft bed, that sort of stuff. But, that's on a lighter note, but we can do the same things with these, what do they call them? Stimming, or these reactions that our kids have to the energies that are going on, which is generally really hard to understand because it's not physical. We don't see it, and what we see in the physical is not a comfortable experience. So I might suggest that to you and maybe others to go to that within space and maybe even ask the question, what does this mean? Or, what's happening here? Or show me what he or she is feeling or experiencing. And sometimes just having that resonance, just can, like you said, he says that he feels like he's dying. And what does that say to a parent? What is our normal reaction is to have fear. Oh my gosh, I don't want my child to die, that sort of thing. But really, he didn't mean it in a negative way, and that's just how he feels. He's so far out of his body. Isn't that what happens to our soul when we pass? Is we leave our body. And so I can imagine that sensation is what he's experiencing. So it's just what it is. He's not making it, something to bring up fear within you, but he's just telling you honestly what's happening. So thank you for sharing that. I know that these things aren't easy to share.
Okay, we have
a question, a comment.
It says, don't know how to get into chat. Idea. Screaming feels at this moment as Daniel's connection to his body so that he knows he has a way back into his body when he goes out so far.
Oh, so that was a comment from Gail. I like that. The visual I get when she says that is I see the sound, because everything is created from sound. Sound and color is what creates what we see in the physical. And so what I saw was a stream of energy, of frequency and vibration coming from his body in the scream. The scream's going out, it's being projected, but it gives him something to connect back into, to pull himself back into his body. That's how I'm interpreting that. That's what I saw.
That's interesting, because my husband was telling me after Daniel wrote that about him screaming in the dying process, my husband said it sounds like he's trying to get away back into his body like I do when I meditate. I go out too far, and he'll use the dog's barking as the I forgot what he called it. He called it the point, or the beacon point or something, to get back into this world, I guess, or his body or whatever, because he'll go out too far to where he doesn't think he's going to come back. I know that sounds goofy, but that's just
that's awesome. I think that's right on. That's spot on with what Gail is touching on here.
Yeah.
So thank you, Gail. Great to hear from you.
And just going back real quick on the, I actually did that with Daniel, and it actually in Sedona when he was having a little screaming, I had this little behavior thing going on, and I actually, for some reason, I decided to mimic him. And you know what happened? He actually stopped and looked at me, and he started to giggle. So, now that you mentioned that, I'm thinking, you know what? Not a bad idea to get back into that space, to see what he's experiencing, it won't hurt. Thank you.
Yeah, it's important. I think that the more we can do that and bring ourselves into that space of non-judgment, so much can unfold right before us. We can start to see the miracles that are in front of us at any given moment. Thank you for sharing that. It's wonderful. So let's get into the next part here where Gail brings in the crystal skull. When I read this part of the book at the time, I had an experience not long before that at kind of a spiritual center that was in my town at the time, and Max the crystal skull was visiting, and I received an opportunity to go to this. It wasn't something that I, even felt like, oh, I got to do this, that sort of thing. It just kind of was interesting to me. And the next thing I knew, I had a ticket to go experience this skull. And I didn't know anything about crystal skulls at that point. And so when I read more information about it, because I had the experience, I went, and I can't say it was necessarily, I had this big, profound aha that happened, but it was enjoyable and it was really neat. And I got to touch them and learn a little bit more about how this particular skull, when you looked at the crystal itself, it had kind of a line through it where they were explaining that had it been carved out by machines that we have today, it would have cracked, because there's different veins within particular crystals that just can't sustain that kind of pressure and vibration and that sort of thing. And so that I thought was fascinating, because this particular skull actually, the story behind it was really interesting. The lady that ended up being its guardian was gifted it from somebody, and it was sitting in her closet for a long time because it kind of creeped her out and she didn't know what to do with it. And it started talking to her telepathically. And so, long story short, eventually she now tours with him and that sort of thing. But it was really funny because she was in denial of that. And I think that that's so fascinating how so many of us go through these mystical experiences and these things that our soul chose at some point earlier on to do. But then when the time happens, we're kind of like, what? This isn't, no, I didn't sign up for this. Can you relate to that at all, Connie?
Heck yes, Amy. I was going to say something about yes, what I was going to say was when I was in Sedona, I could swear a crystal skull was talking to me. And I'm just realizing in this moment that it was a crystal skull talking to me, because I was, not to get into too much about the pyramid, because I don't know what I'm talking about with the pyramid, but the pyramid was about to go active or live. And for some reason, Gail has this little shrine, what I call a shrine of crystals. And all of a sudden, I just walked towards the crystal shrine, and I got a sense, pick up 2 crystals and walk over to Daniel to ask him which one. And I did this twice. I brought 2 over, which one? And he wouldn't pick one. And I kept hearing from Daniel, neither one of those. So as soon as I got back to get another set of crystals, Michael, who's the builder of the pyramid, he comes walking in. Now, he was outside. He comes walking in, and he goes, okay, ask Daniel which one of these crystals we should bury and which one we should do. I forgot what else we want to do with it, but one of them was to be buried. And I thought that was interesting because I don't know why I was walking over there to ask Daniel which one. And Michael comes in to ask me which one, ask Daniel which one. So the crystal skulls were talking to me about picking a crystal for the pyramid. And I'm just not realizing that.
Thank you for sharing that. Oh, that's really wonderful.
I'm amazed right now, actually. Yeah. And, you know, back in 2011, when we were first awakened, I was actually told, oh, you're going to be working with crystals and stones. And I was thinking, what? And I just thought it was very interesting how, when I read the book, the crystal skulls were mentioned. And I would never have thought, I mean, I've never had an experience before with crystal skulls or stones or anything like that. So I think this is something unfolding for me that I need to pay attention to.
I love it. We're witnessing the aha moment in the moment. That's great. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff about the crystal skulls in here. And I'll have to get with Gail about this. But I know that when she visited the Mitchell Hedges skull, which I don't know if that touches, if it's touched on in the book. I can't recall now. It's not in this chapter, but how that skull was even discovered.
I think it's mentioned later on in the book.
Okay.
But it is mentioned. The crystal, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because I knew that I had heard the story, which is these stories are so interesting how these skulls come through, because Gail actually mentions there's a difference between some of the ones that were man-made now and then some of the ancient crystal skulls. I've heard of there being 13 specific crystal skulls that were from Atlantis. And I think that might be touched on in this book, because Mitchell Hedges is, I think it's the possibility that this is one of them, which is different. It's different in the frequencies and the codes and the information that's in it. But I know Gail has a photograph, so maybe we can get information as to regards to if that's on the website, and if it's not, we'll see if we can get that put up there so that people that are interested in that facet of this information can go there and see that, because I have seen those pictures and it's really interesting because they weren't there physically when she was looking at them, but they showed up in the digital photographs, which I must say have been really an awesome way to capture spirit and energies now. It's really amazing the way that they comes through for some people, and I think it's specific the way that they come through. Not everybody has those anomalies show up in their pictures, so there's definite purpose to that. Let me see here. I mean, it says right here, it seems, however, that the ancient skulls are already activated, yet only those with an evolved mind heart linkage of higher consciousness and higher love can access the keys and codes within these portals to advanced and perhaps future worlds. So that right there kind of gives a little taste and mentions of the difference between the ancient crystal skulls and the skulls that they have today. Let's see. I'm kind of back on that page of 92 where she's talking about Bell Rock. But I guess we kind of went over that as far as this body experience. And, you know, I encourage, and maybe we can ask a question here for Lyrica today, to maybe share a little bit more on that, where we are today, where she is, and her perspective on what was going on with that. That's something that is really interesting to me, as well as I think really important in regards to what's going on with autism. Again, like I said, you know, it's been my understanding that there is pretty much a lack of integration of the spirit essence into the physical body. And part of their assistance, and Connie, you and I discussed this the other day, we assist them by us kind of ascending. And there was a mention in the book where a lot of people that are in kind of the spiritual path, they want to ascend their bodies. And I know that that was kind of the way to do things in the old spiritual paradigm. But now in this golden age, we're in this time where we can actually be spirit embodied in form. the goal isn't so much to be out of the body anymore, because where we are, we can be in the body and access all of, you know, what Lyrica accesses, all that information, those higher realms, the higher dimensions. That's where we're going. We're letting go of the third dimension and the fourth dimension. Some people call that density, and I think that's a really great word to utilize as far as calling it density, because sometimes dimensions can really kind of take your mind off into different places and get you all confused. But when we have these particular, all of the dimensions have a density to them, but the lower ones that we have been functioning on is where all of the stuff we don't really care for exists at this point. There's rigidity and there's judgment and there's agendas and that sort of thing. And those things don't exist in the higher dimensions or densities. So yeah, if Lyrica, at some point you can comment in the Autism Experience group. We'd love to hear from you more about kind of embodiment, integration, and what that looks like for you today, because I know when this book was written, you know, a lot has changed since then. Is there something you want to say about that, Connie?
No.
Okay. It just looked like you were beaming with something to say. That's all right. So yeah, just moving on in regards to that, on page 93, there's this part that I really loved, and it's where Gail says, once again, I was reminded of the vast differences between souls like Lyrica and most other earth dwellers. As Lyrica continues to struggle to remain in her body and be at peace in the human experience, others seeking direct spiritual experiences are trying to get out of their bodies to access the higher dimensional realms. So that was touching on exactly what I was just talking about. And down further where Lyrica starts to talk, there's there's a part where she's talking about getting the codes, and Bill was helping kind of, it had to do with getting these codes out of the crystal skull. And essentially the thing I wanted to highlight here was where Gail's realizing this part of her purpose and her mission with autism, and it says she has density to save autism from wasted way seen. And I can so appreciate that, because that really encapsulates Gail's role with this book, and with all the work that she's been doing with nonverbal autistics and just their ongoing message. I absolutely, that's just beautiful, because I really think that you're accomplishing that, Gail. It's happening. And I want to mention really quick too, Connie mentioned the pyramid. For those of you that didn't catch it in our last show, there is actually a physical structure, this beautiful pyramid that was created. It's not, it was created, it's physical, it's there, but there's still an ongoing process. That's probably the newest thing that's happening right now with the Nonverbal Autistics and the New Earth Academy. And so for those of you who are interested and want to find out more information about that, whenever that information arises, you're going to want to go to, I believe it's the Autism website, and sign up for the newsletter. And so whenever any new information is ready to be released, you will receive information from Gail directly. So I want to get down to get to page 94. I've got yellow all over the page, and it really touches on what Connie and I were discussing, is really the highlight of what this message is saying at this point. This to me is where, you know, we kind of step out of our focus on autism, because it's really the message. You know, it's kind of like with all of the great sages and saints and leaders, you know, Jesus, Buddha, whomever, you know, you see as somebody that was chosen by God to deliver a message. It's not really about the messenger. It's about the message. And we often do that. You know, Connie and I were just talking about that yesterday, and how we tend to, it's kind of comes from that place of we're in this separated place from ourselves, from God, and we're moving into a place of wholeness. And what we tend to do is, for those who seem or are kind of our guides to a certain degree, and in this case, the nonverbal children, or our children are guiding us, we tend to at times rely on them to give us the information that we're looking for. And what happens, Connie? What happens when we do that?
They point the finger back at you. You gotta go within. You know, they say we can't continue to hold you. You got to hold yourself. And that's true, you know, because I noticed that, especially after I found out that, you know, Daniel had this spark in him and he can communicate. You know, I forgot what Lyrica called it, airing your dirty laundry out under us or something. It was a few chapters back when she goes, sometimes people will come to us to, that's how I interpreted it, you know, that she was saying, you know, don't air out your laundry. But that's what I was doing. Like, what do you think about this? And he's like, you know, like, for instance, recently, you know, my mother, I wanted to see if he wanted to say something to my mother-in-law about her loss or what she's going through, with, you know, father-in-law passing. And he typed, mother-in-law is your issue. So it can't be, it's like, I can't, you know, you can't rely on me for everything. You have to go within, because you are a master as well. And I think that that's easy to forget that, because they have this, they're talking, you know, from a higher plane, that you automatically look at them like, okay, you're going to be my guide. And that's not necessarily the case. It's, we're each other's guide. We're both masters. You just bring a piece and I bring a piece, because let me explain the piece. My piece I bring is helping you in this world, you know, helping you with your day-to-day activities, you know, whatever the case may be. Your role is to bring the messages, but both of our roles is to go inside, to go deep within, you know, and to, with me, it's a lot of the self-doubt, my own self-judgment. Like, I'm my own worst critic, and I had to really realize that about myself, that I beat myself up to death. Oh, I'm not like this person. Oh, you know, I don't have anything to offer the world. Why was I shown this if I can't do that? It's just a whole bunch of, like, you know, stuff that I have to deal with, and I'm really being honest that I have to deal with it, because before it was, oh, I got this. Not so much, you know, but I am getting this. But before it was like, I got it. Leave me alone. Don't tell me nothing. But now it's, I can't lie to myself. Or like Gail says, you can't fool a person in autism.
Yes, I love that part when she talks about that. And that's the message. The message is to, you know, we really need to come through all of these stories that we've told ourselves, these beliefs that are holding us back from, you know, who we're meant to be. You know, we're not meant to be all of those things that you were mentioning, and we all have those things. And like I said, you know, as soon as they come to surface, what are we used to doing? We're used to kind of shoving it away, or, you know, oh, I got this, and you tuck it away in your box of denial, and you kind of promise yourself you're never going to look at it again, and it's going to go away. But it can be as simply as accepting what is, and just say, you know what, that's how it was. That's what happened. Yes, I have an issue with this, so I'm going to take full heart and examine it. I'm just going to look at it. You know, we're not, when I say look at something and examine something, I don't mean judge it. You know, because when we start to have our opinion about it, and that rational mind starts to come in, and we start to have that kind of self-pity, and, you know, we become down on ourselves. We're not easy on ourselves about it. That's us getting back entangled with an energy that's actually, you know, attempting to release from our space. And so I totally agree with you. I think it is so important. And that's what I feel is this message. This message is what it's always been. And Gail comes to that in this last part of, it starts on page 95 of chapter 7. And I like the way she did this. I'm going to read this one part to you. I might end up reading more, because there's just this part that I love right after it. As I pause to reflect on all the experiences chronicled in part 1, I'm awestruck by the massive impact that they had on my life. They've had on my life. I see a character in this story, me, who has stepped into roles that my historic self would not have even dared to dream about. An advocate, a healer, a teacher, and a writer are all staring back at me as if to say, You are amazing. I think we can all do this. We can all look at our lives, and instead of focusing on the things that are rising to the surface to be released, we can ask ourselves, what is being revealed from what's being released? Turn our focus a little bit towards the accomplishments. Who do we see shining through those curtains that shrouded who we actually are? So I feel that that's an important point to make. And is there anything you want to say about that, Connie? I'm going to gather myself up, and then I can get back to the second part that I wanted to touch on.
That was beautiful. You read the part I wanted to read. And also, just going back to going inside, what I found with myself is that a lot of the things that I have fears about or, having issues with, they were old belief systems or other people's belief systems. I dug in and realized, oh my gosh, I am, fretting over a belief system that I can't even prove. There's just no proof or evidence of any of this that I feel like I'm being judged on. So what's my issue? So, I've come to a point where not only do I go inside, I actually transmute it by the time I leave, if that makes any sense. By the time I'm done, I actually transmute it into something positive.
My mute button's taking time to... Yes. I experience the same thing. And so perhaps that's all we need to do is just observe it, and to not make it wrong, just an experience that we're having. And that's the next piece here that Gail talks about. And I really, I want to touch on the fact that this is a reflection of what we are experiencing as a humanity and as individuals. And so it happens on the individual level. This is the important part, and why we want to keep impressing upon that the important thing here is to be going within constantly, checking in with yourself, checking in with what is true for you, because what we are conditioned to do, what we are in habit of, and what we're used to doing is going with the status quo, trying to fit in. And, Connie, I want to touch on that really quick. You mentioned something about feeling alone. And, what I get from that is there is this sense of feeling kind of singled out sometimes in our life, no matter what it is that we're experiencing. And it doesn't feel comfortable because what we've been doing for so long is trying to fit in. But I know that one of the other pieces of the message that autism brings is we are each authentic. We are each very specific. You've heard that, we're each like a snowflake. We're all very different drops of water in this big ocean. And for us to really embrace that and to love that, the self-love part is so important. And to work on that, there are lots of funny little exercises you can do to work on the love of the self. And then it just gets deeper after that. You reach these points, and Gail really touches on that here in this part of the book on her experience with herself. And when you love yourself and when you accept things for how they are, and you accept that you played a part in the creation of the experience that you had, there is this level of empowerment that really can't be denied. And it really actually blossoms that self-love. Because we've been taught you don't love yourself, you're supposed to serve other people. But there's also that adage that says you can't really truly love somebody else if you don't love yourself. And that's one of those perplexing things when you're not used to practicing self-love and that really love that's unconditional. So we're moving from that place also of victim, blame, guilt, to being empowered and to not blaming anybody, to accept all is the way it is, and not having that distorted view of control as well. So I'm just going to read this section because I love it so much. I think it's really important to what we're talking about. Let's see, it says, I ask myself, what do I see as the keys within my own spiritual awakening process that might assist others to step into or accelerate their own transformational experience? Most important was that I had to release old false beliefs to make room for the truth to emerge. There that is, that uncovering of, you know, who you are and the shrouds that we had covering that. For example, a major untruth grounded in grief was that it was Lyrica's autism that was to blame for the missing love between us. This is such a good part. My epiphany here was a staggering one. The love between us that couldn't be reached for so many years wasn't because it wasn't there. It was because I wasn't there. The love I brought to the door of our relationship was a needy love that was asking another to fill me, to heal the emptiness in me that cried for a wholeness and completion that I couldn't find elsewhere. I couldn't find it because the wellspring that I was looking for was within me, not somewhere out there. The discovery of missing love was all about me finding my own dearness within. Only then could I come to Lyrica and bring a love that was non-toxic to her. So amazing, you know, how what we perceive as love is actually was toxic in a way, because it had agendas, right? It was conditional. It was based on conditions. And so when she was able to let go of the blame of autism and just kind of recognize that what she was looking for was kind of that love dependency. I think that I've definitely gone through that in my life with partners, you know, and over the years, even with my husband now, I've had these moments of us not getting along and kind of examining what separation might look like. And in those times, I regained from that feeling of dependence. I regained more of myself and not needing to experience that from him. And then, of course, that illusion of us separating was really just an illusion. That's something that I could have chose at that moment. So I think that that's so beautiful. It says a lot. You want to share anything about that, Connie?
I think that was brilliantly written, because it's not just autism. I mean, she's writing it under the autism umbrella, but it's really it extends far from just autism, because, you know, that needy love, to heal the emptiness in me that cried for wholeness. That's like what we all go through, like what you're just saying, you know. And I think it was brilliantly written. It resonates with me.
Yeah, I agree. And then she refers to it as a heavenly sort of love, divine blessing emanating from the heart of Mother, Father, God. And then she touches on, you know, the greeting of Namaste, as if to say God, and the God in me beholds the God in you. I think that really says it very clearly. And thank you for mentioning that, about how that it's not about autism. And that's something that I want to reiterate, and I will continue to reiterate through this process, especially now that we're getting into part 2. You know, read this book as though Lyrica is speaking to you. That's what I did. I read it as though I wasn't looking at it as though she was speaking about someone with autism. Because we that example for them as well. So the more that we can embody that self-love and that truth and be the example of that here on this earth, then they have something to refer to and to meet us in the middle. So we can meet them and we can access the spaces and realms and the information that they have, just as much as, you know, depending on their soul's journey, their soul's direction, on them coming to experience what we're experiencing as well. I know that there's been many stories of families and children coming to speak that hadn't spoken, you know, and I think it's important here too to not, Gail mentions this actually. It's on the next page. This is a perfect flow. I had to let go of all agendas to change or fix her and get busy changing and fixing me. That was the key into her heart and mind. And that's when she says, the truth is you can't fool a person in autism. And later she says, who comes from a place of love that accepts me as I am and simply asks the same of me, asks me the same in return. So what she's saying here is that Lyric is just asking her to do essentially for herself, you know, and to just be honest and an acceptance. So the interesting part is what follows is, we have these agendas to fix or change or heal our children. That's something that's very important. But if we start to recognize that really nothing's broken, nothing specifically needs healing. What needs healing is the heart. What needs healing is the self-love. The being inside is what needs healing, not the person that you're seeing outside of you, because our world is reflective. And our children, especially those with autism, are very clear mirrors. And they show us what it is that we need to change or make adjustments to within ourselves. And that's when the miracle occurs and the change happens within them, because they no longer have to reflect that energy to us. Whether or not it's a detriment to them or not, I don't think it matters. The point is that we notice it and we're able to accept it and move forward, instead of being stuck in that place of feeling like we are healing or fixing them. And it's all good intentions, but it's a little bit twisted. So if we can move forward in this book and recognize that there is a message that is speaking directly to us, it's time to be selfish, people. It's time to really focus within and go within, and you're going to get the best parts of this book that you're meant to get.
I wanted to say that one of the things I love about the book is how when I first got it, I got it because, I have an autistic child and I want to see what's going on. But then as I was reading the book, it switched from being a book about my autistic child to a book about me. And I was like, hell yeah. I love it. It's awesome. That's amazing. So it makes sense. Yes. What you're saying.
I love that you're excited about that, because how wonderful for us to get to see that enthusiasm, because I think that that's what each of our souls is screaming out to us. Our souls are screaming for us to be like, hey, pay attention to me, to who you are, because you're looking outside of yourself for the answers that I've got right here for you. And I love, too, that Gail actually touches on this, too, because it's not just about having autism. And she says, for those of you who do not have an autistic soul in your life, which I know at this point, with the rate that we're going, someone has been touched by someone with autism, whether they know it or not, because there are so many able to be here on this planet at this point. And that is because of each of us. The collective heart is open. It's receiving higher frequencies that we were not able to hold before. So that's a telling. Connie said the other day, everyone's doing really good. And I absolutely agree with her. So we got to just keep on. But she says that if you don't have an autistic soul in your life, you will have other natural catalysts for your spiritual awakening process that will facilitate your soul's growth. Whenever we experience strong negative emotions such as fear, anger, or grief, we must realize that we are in a state of separation from our truth. The first secret to awakening is to fully feel and experience the state of separation, for it is a powerful teacher. Second is to go deep within ourselves to extricate the core belief, illusion, or stance that holds us captive within this painful experience. That wisdom is always there waiting for us. And third, as the untruth is exposed to the light of day, the real truth can be set free and become a mighty force for healing. The fourth and final secret is to utilize that new truth as a powerful beacon to guide the way that we live our life. And I thought that was just, an example, really brilliant steps of divine guidance for how we can, one of the ways that we can move through these processes and utilize every experience that we have each day, should we choose to make them significant for our growth. So is there anything else that you want to share to wrap us up for the day, Connie? Is there any more about the book? I love how Gail is such a beautiful poet and a brilliant writer. So thank you, Gail, for shining that for us.
Yes, thank you, Gail, and thank you, Amy. I think you ended it on a perfect note.
Great, wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And please take into consideration the invitation to join us live. We can't say enough how helpful it is to hear from you. So get out of your little shells. I know each of us are hiders in our own ways, but know that you're actually going to be doing, regardless of, okay, I got thrown off because Gail has put in a comment, and I totally love how she changed this here. She said, love the word self-full, not so much selfish. So I completely agree with that. Thank you for shifting those words for us, because that is something that we also need to pay attention to, is the words that we use so loosely. Words really minimize what's really going on. They are kind of the lowest, kind of densest way to express. So it's important that we use the correct frequency to really express what it is that we are feeling and what we want to see in ourselves and in the world. So thank you for that, Gail. I want to invite you guys, so please contact us if that is something that you want to do to participate. We'd love to see your face, even if it's just for a little bit. And if you don't want to be on video, that's absolutely fine too. But please continue to be open and share some experiences, because that is what is really going to help other people come out and to share and really be able to have all of our collective ahas on what this message is bringing to humanity, this love letter to humanity. And as Gail said, or Lyrica said, the book is the butterfly. So the butterfly that's come out of the chrysalis gold is this book. And I'm really excited to join with you, Connie, in the next couple weeks on August 18th, Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We'll be right here again. And please don't forget to subscribe and share and give a thumbs up to this video. And we love you all so much, and we thank you for being here and your presence with us. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.